Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I'm G,
I'm D.
and we've got a pretty good show for you tonight. We're going to be discussing a few things around the election and COVID and some other stuff. We currently are 15 days past Election Day, and we have yet to get a concession from Mr. Trump, although he has basically said Biden won, although he couched it by saying he cheated to get it. So, Dee, why don't you tell us what you know about how the transition's going, or lack thereof?
Well, exactly. And hello, everybody. We're sitting at a position right now where we are 62 days, 16 hours, and 24 minutes away from what will be the presidential inauguration in 2021, and we still don't have a transition plan in place. The secretary or administrator of the General Services Administrator by law is supposed to sign paperwork saying when there's an apparent winner that's declared by the Associated Press and other media organizations, she's supposed to declare that, sign that documentation so that the transition can begin, that the new administration's transition team can start using federal funding to be able to get plans in place to make sure that our government continues seamlessly, and none of that's happening.
Right.
We've got the commission on the tax that showed that while not solely to blame, a big problem in the Bush administration was the length of time it took for Bush v. Gore to be settled, and in those transitions to a national security standpoint.
Right.
We know that in I believe it was in 2008, that's when the Mumbai attacks took place, right in the interim period between when Barack Obama won election the first time and was sworn in 2009. So this is the time period when we have a lot of national security potential crises happening, and it's more important now than ever that plan be put in place. And the GSA administrator will not sign it. She's scared to death of Trump for her job, which will lead us to our next topic in a second. But I just think it's the height of irresponsibility. Everyone knows that Joe Biden won the election. He won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College. And yet they're still grasping at straws. So much so that they actually put Rudy Giuliani in a Pennsylvania courtroom yesterday for the first time in, I think, 25 years, and it was a massive embarrassment.
Right. Yeah, it seems like every time they've gone to court, at least so far, they've had either mixed results or they've been kicked out of court altogether. So
I think the one case that they won was like it allowed their observers to stand like 2 feet closer or something like that. That was the only thing that they won, and it was basically because the judge saw no reason why. It's like, okay, you want that? Okay, we'll do that, whatever. But there's no proof of any election fraud. There's no proof of anything going on. In fact, every time it's really embarrassing for our country, because every time they bring forward their quote unquote proof, I mean, your old friend Tucker Carlson had to give an on-air apology because he named 4 cases in Georgia of dead people voting and they were all alive.
Right.
And so it's really embarrassing. It's like the I know I don't want to go into our history before too much, but I know both of us have had times where we've been let go from positions, and it would be like us just sitting there in the office of the places we've been let go, and they would just say, and us just saying, we don't believe it. This is fake news. We still work here. No, you don't get to deal in your own reality, and that's what's happening. They're trying to set up an alternative reality,
right?
And a lot of people believe it. So it's a scary time for our country.
Well, one of the things that I heard, I think even Dahlia said it on our last podcast, is that since when did the media get to call a presidential race? And I got to thinking about that, and I was like, well, forever. I mean, at least in my lifetime, it's always been, the Associated Press looks at the races and makes the call. And then, of course, if there's some mitigating circumstances like there was in Florida in 2000, they come back and say, well, we're taking that out of one camp and putting it in the undecided, or putting it in the other camp. And, so they correct themselves as they go along. Right. And nobody's ever had a problem with it. So one of the things I want to do is find out when this all started. Well, because, Trump supporters make it seem like, media just started calling races like in 2016. Well, it goes all the way back to 1848 when the Associated Press first called their first presidential race. So it's been around a long time. And I think that's just everything they've thrown against the wall so far. Nothing has stuck, including blaming the media.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this topic later, but also including trying to strong arm local Republican officials.
Yep.
They thought they had a big win last night in Wayne County in Detroit because the election committee there voted, and it split 2 votes for Republicans, 2 votes for Democrats, and they had to vote to certify the election. In their initial ballot, the 2 Republican electors voted to not certify the results. And Trump was, sending out fundraising emails. Oh, this is a big victory for our country, and blah blah blah. And they ended up changing their votes because of pressure that the voters of that district put on them, because there was no rationale for them to not vote to certify the results. So I mean, it's kind of funny because I know you were told this. I've been told this to my face with not as clean language as I'm about to use, but I was told, in 2016, I was told, suck it up. We survived 8 years of Obama. You'll survive 8 years of Trump.
Right.
I was told. And I said, well, first of all, we're going to have another election in 4 years. But this was from a guy who lost the popular vote at the time by 3 million votes. There was some squirrely stuff that happened in those elections. I don't care what anybody says, but it happened. Did people protest? Yeah, they marched for women's rights, but you didn't have a bunch of people like out in the streets going, Hillary won, Hillary won. You just didn't see it like they're doing now. Hillary gave a concession speech, and Obama had within a week, he had Trump at the White House, had started the transition process. Vice President Biden welcomed Mike Pence to the White House as well, and to the Naval Observatory, the Vice President's residence. So, for them now to have bitter tears and complain and just want to drag this out. I mean, and I'll just tell you this, JP Morgan came out today with a study where they talked about the economy and how the economy really did well after the election was over, and even better when we had an apparent winner with Joe Biden. They said that the one thing that would cause us to have a Great Depression would be if, for some reason, if Trump still won't give it up in January and insists that he won and tries to have a dual inauguration. And I got to ask you, G, it sounds far-fetched, right?
Yeah, it does. But when you think about it, not really.
If Trump, let me ask you this, if Trump tells the Republican members of Congress and Senate, you will not attend Joe Biden's inauguration, do you think they'll go anyway?
No. Well, Mitt Romney will. Nobody else will.
I mean, and what is
Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and maybe Murkowski. So,
but what does that say for our form of government at that point? We don't have a government.
Right.
We definitely don't have two. We don't have two functioning parties. I heard it described last night by a commentator that said we have, and these are both small D's, by the way. We have a Democratic Party, and we now have an anti-democratic party.
Right.
And it's like one that's in favor of democracy and one that's not in favor of democracy, that's in favor of authoritarianism. And unless we win, the results aren't valid.
Right. Well, I heard, so you brought up Detroit. I heard a woman speaking about the vote count in Detroit, and her question was, why aren't they asking for votes to be recounted in Oakland or Lene or Livingston or Washtenaw counties? Because And the bottom line is those are the richest counties in Michigan, and they have an overwhelmingly white population, whereas Detroit has an overwhelmingly black population. And so to her, this is a blatant attempt to get black people's votes thrown out. And so if they can't do it one way, like they did in Georgia, where they just clipped you off the rolls, they're trying to do it another way where they're trying to get your vote not to count, which is
it's one
crazy.
more example. Yeah, it's one more example of disenfranchisement of African American voters. There's no doubt about it. They're suing for a recount right now in the state of Wisconsin, and they only pick 2 counties. One's Milwaukee, and the other one is the county that's around Madison. Again, predominantly Democratic areas and the highest concentrations of African American voters in the state.
Yep.
I mean, it's not even hidden. So we need this president, this current occupant of the White House, to man up, step up, and start a transition process.
Right.
And I don't really count on him doing it. I could see him not doing it ever. I could see him just saying nope, and then just flying off to Mar-a-Lago or to Russia after his term is up on January 20th or January 19th, skipping out of town because he doesn't want to have to do the ceremonial car ride,
right,
or anything like that. And it'll be a shame because he thinks he's being a tough guy, but every day of this, while it may embolden some of his followers now, it's just causing the rest of us to recoil even more from him. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who voted for him that regret it based on how he's acting now.
Right.
Which leads us to a great topic as we talk the tree man. There are a lot of people that mentioned the General Services Administrator. What's that?
You were breaking up pretty bad there. You might want to repeat that.
Okay, I just said brings us to a great segue to another topic where we talked about this transition or lack thereof, and we talked about the General Service Administrator being nervous about her job and whether she'll lose her job, and probably has good reason to feel that way because several people have lost their jobs already since the election. Even though we're sitting at 62 days until inauguration, people are being fired, acting people are being put in those positions. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the firings that are going on right now?
Well, the first thing he did was he fired his crap, I can't remember the guy's title.
Secretary of Defense.
Secretary of Defense, right. He fired his Secretary of Defense basically because the guy had gone against him and refused to enlist the military in any kind of strong arm tactics in regards to the election, and in part because when Trump made his little impromptu jaunt across Lafayette Park and held up the Bible upside down, he made his Secretary of Defense go with him, and so he later said, Mark Esper later said he shouldn't have gone, that wasn't what he was supposed to do, that wasn't his role, and that just made Trump kind of send him off the rails, so to speak. And then he replaced Esper with not the next person in line or the next person after that, but someone way down the line that basically thinks like Trump does, thinks the election was stolen, even though there's no evidence of that anywhere. And it just, it sends a bad message to the world, basically saying, we're not really prepared. So, and then the latest one is he's fired Christopher Krebs, who was in charge of cybersecurity. He was the senior most highest ranking official in the cybersecurity department. His job was to oversee the election and make sure that no Russian shenanigans took place. And by all accounts, he did a pretty good job of that. One thing about this election, we haven't heard anything about Russians hacking or trying to hack or anything like that. And it was mostly because of what Christopher Krebs did. And so, just today, I think that's today. Let me check the date on this story. Yesterday. So yesterday, Trump decided, I don't need you anymore, and dumped Christopher Krebs. So he's just doing things out of spite. He's like a petulant child that didn't get his way. He's going to take his ball and go home. And all in the meanwhile, the rest of us have to suffer because he's doing some things that are going to be irreparable in harm to the environment, to everybody.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, there's very little reason to fire people at this point when you're on your way out. Now, he's still under the illusion that he's going to have a second term, but there's no reason to fire people unless you want to get things done quickly.
Right.
The only thing I can think of. He's talking about the other thing, big thing with Esper was Esper opposes any troop withdrawals that Trump wants to accomplish by the end of his term. So he's looking to pull down as many troops as he can out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, and out of Syria. And that's Somalia too, I believe you mentioned. And so the military, while he's the commander in chief and may put those orders in place, they're very leery about withdrawing the troops this quickly and this fast. So, but you know what? Trump doesn't seem to really give a about what people think or about anybody else's opinion. He wants what he wants, and he wants it now. Just like you said, like a petulant child.
Yeah. Well, and our allies are just shaking their heads, wondering, what the heck's going on over here, and when are we going to return to sanity? And it certainly isn't, 4 more years of Trump. Nobody wants that. Well, I guess 70 million misguided Americans want that, but like you said, I think now they're starting to realize, this guy's kind of crazy. So
I'm glad you mentioned that 70 figure, because I've heard that bandied around a lot, particularly on right-wing media, where they've said, you need to think about what those 70 million people who voted for Trump. That's a big group. You got to think about it. And I'm going, yeah, but it's like 76, almost 77 million voted for Biden.
Right.
So you need to think about what they want too.
I will tell you this: the week before the election, so I work at Costco, and the week before the election, we saw tons of MAGA hats, tons of MAGA masks, tons of Trump stickers on cars, and we hardly saw anything with Biden's name on it, like maybe 1 or 2 the week before the election. Then the election happened. Now we've only seen 2 since the election. I've only seen 2 Trump bumper stickers, no MAGA hats, and I've seen a ton of Biden stickers or Biden Harris stickers. So it's pretty funny how things have changed. But
well, who do you think? I mean, there's a lot of swirling about other firings. Anybody else on the radar that could be let go next?
Well, I think he's going to let his chief of staff go pretty quick, even though the guy's done a pretty good job from what I've seen. I think he's probably going to let him go. To be honest with you, it's such a revolving door. I'm not even sure who's in the administration, who's not. I mean, Hope Hicks supposedly out.
Two names I've heard bandied about are Christopher Wray, the FBI director. Trump is furious at him for not pushing the Hunter Biden narrative stronger, and that he wants to let him go. And then also Gina Haspel, the CIA director. Both were Trump appointees. I mean, that's the part that gets me about this. He's firing people that he appointed. It's like the initial people he let go. He said, with Comey and some of those who were like longer tenured, or people that were that had long tenures in the department. Say, oh, these are holdovers from the Obama administration. I got to get rid of them. People he's letting go now are people he put in there.
Right. Well, Gina Haspel, one of the reasons he liked her was because she was the main architect during the Bush administration of the torture policy that allowed our troops and the CIA to go in, capture people off the battlefield, and waterboard them and do other kind of torture techniques. And then
Trump said he wanted to bring it back, didn't he?
Yeah, he said he wanted to bring it back, and that's why he put her in, because she's in favor of all that. The rank and file at the CIA were pretty dismayed when she got picked to lead the agency. So
yeah, it's going to be a wild few weeks. So That is a good segue right there, talking about crazy and some things like that. Let's go down to the state of Texas and talk about the junior senator from the state of Texas,
Right.
who I'm going to quote you now, remind you of Grandpa Munster.
Right.
He reminds me of the Zodiac Killer, but probably one of the
Chris?
other, and then he turned around and carried water.
Yeah.
You there?
You froze up. I heard the word other and then you just froze.
Well, I said he was one of the weakest senators in the Senate, just because of the way he carried water for Donald Trump, and still does, considering the way Donald Trump treated his wife and his father.
Right.
So Mr. Cruz made a couple of headlines this week. Number one, he made a headline for calling a senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, called him a total ass. That's his words,
Right.
not mine for any of the children listening. But he, for asking that the chair, Dan Sullivan, who was chairing the Senate at that time, wear a mask when he's in the dais, considering that there was staff in front of him. And so Ted Cruz, went on this whole tirade on Twitter about, because he is a big keyboard cowboy, by the way. I'm sure he wouldn't say anything to Sherrod Brown's face, but
Right.
about how Sherrod Brown is a total ass because he wears a mask when no one's around, and there's no need for him to wear a mask. And Sherrod Brown was pointing out the fact that the staff of the Senate's been called into work because the Senate's in session and they don't have a choice. They've got to be. And so, any thoughts on Senator Cruz?
Well, I want to say the reason they've been called back into session is because they're trying to ram through some things that Trump wants to get, on the books. One of those is they're fast tracking drilling in the Arctic National Arctic Wildlife Refuge.
Which, if I might ask, if Trump really believes he won the election, why does he need to jam anything through since he's going to have a second term?
Well, I'm guessing in the back of his mind, he realizes he's not going to have a second term. That's why he's trying to get all this stuff done.
Yeah.
That's just a guess, but yeah, Ted Cruz. I mean, he's put his foot in his mouth a lot. Like you said, Trump basically said his dad was part of the plot to kill Kennedy, and I can't remember what he said about his mom, but I remember it wasn't too good. But and then now he's basically Trump's right-hand man in the Senate, well, along with Mitch McConnell. But and so you just wonder, where this is all going to lead. So I hope it leads in 4 years to Beto taking him down in another Senate race. So that's what I hope.
Yeah, well, the other thing that CNN did a nice job of pointing it out this week, that back in July of this year, the Senator Cruz went on CNN and said that he hoped Joe Biden didn't win, but when Joe Biden wins, he guarantees a week after the election that all the Democratic governors will take away all their mandates for masks, all their stay-at-home orders, all the restrictions on business will be gone because Joe Biden will have won, even before the inauguration. And we both know that as we sit here on November 18th, year 2020 of our Lord coronavirus, the virus is spiking back up.
Right.
And there's stronger mandates being put in place where you are.
Yep.
There's some type of stronger mandates. Our governor Bolstead is not. He's probably the last person in the country going to put. He and Kristi Noem will compete for last state with a mask mandate,
right?
North Dakota. But it's spiking back up. We have 3,000 cases a day now coming out, and so, it's just funny to me that Ted Cruz has all these big guarantees and runs his mouth all the time about people being an ass. And if anybody knows anything about being an ass, it's Ted Cruz.
Right. Well, we just passed a ominous milestone where we hit 250,000 dead.
That's very sad but true.
Yeah.
So let's keep it in the Senate, and why don't you take us to your second favorite senator after Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina.
Right.
Lindsey made a little news this week.
Yes, he did. So the first thing is he placed a call to the person running the election in Georgia, Raffensperger, and he basically asked him to throw out some ballots. And Raffensperger refused and said, if they're legal ballots, they have to be counted.
Now,
And then,
Raffensperger, he's a Democrat, right?
no, he's a staunch Republican.
I was being a little bit
Yep,
rhetorical.
I know you were. In fact, the whole upper leadership of Georgia is Republican, and you don't hear much from Governor Kemp these days. But um, but Raffensperger is kind of the main person you hear from these days. He said it was a free and fair election. There weren't any more shenanigans than you normally see, which, in every election, there's going to be a handful of people that, try to vote for their sister or, try to vote twice or, just to see what they can pull off, right? If they can actually do it. And, the state caught a bunch of those. And so it's no big deal. He agreed to a hand recount, which should be concluded today. If not today, by noon tomorrow. Last I saw, they had 4.3 million out of almost 5 million votes cast that had already been counted, hand counted. And then once that gets done, I'm told Mr. Trump is going to ask for a recount, which will then be done electronically. So I don't know what he's hoping to get out of an electronic recount that he couldn't get out of a hand recount, but
Well, I think
that's going to go on. And then Lindsey Graham admitted that he talked to 2 other states and about the election, and election officials in those states said they never spoke to him. And then he came back and said, well, I spoke to the governor in one, and I can't remember who I talked to in the other. So it's amazing how senators have selective memories when it suits them.
Yeah, it's funny to me on a couple of different levels. Number one, you already mentioned this, but all the leadership in Georgia is Republican, and the mantra we heard was, "Oh, all these shenanigans going on in Democrat-run states. Oh, the Democratic Party's run all these states." But you look at Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. All those states have Democratic governors, but they have Republican legislatures.
Yep.
And the whole thing with these recounts, we've talked about this ad nauseum, and with the mail-in ballots, is all because the Republican legislature refused to change their processes and allow those ballots to be counted before the election date. And I think it's because they anticipated exactly where we are today.
Yep.
They wanted to have some way to try to inject some kind of doubt into it. But, Raffensperger, I think that guy's probably going to win a John F. Kennedy Library Profile and Courage Award because, how easy would it have been for him just to give in to his party? How easy would it have been for him just to, now I know it would have caused a stink for everybody else, but with that much party pressure on you, and I'm sure the words were probably said to him. Now, again, I'm not direct quoting, but I'm sure some version of, if you want to run for future office, you will take care of this for us.
Right.
Was construed in some way, and or be a good party team player, all those things, and he stood his ground, and thank God that he did, and thank God that he's exposing it too, because I feel like Lindsey Graham needs to be investigated by the Senate for an ethics violation and potentially by the FEC for a federal election tampering charge, because if you or I picked up the phone and called and made a threat to an election official and said they better throw out some ballots, I guarantee you we'd have somebody, the State Bureau of Investigation, coming to our door to talk to us about it.
Yeah, or the FBI, one of the two.
Hey, one other quick question about elections for you before we get ready to wrap up. But how many of the races that have been called for Republicans in the Senate, how many of those races are the Republican Party suing to be recounted and calling that those are fraudulent elections.
Right. As far as I know, there are none. Or as one lawyer for Trump said in his appearance in court, less than zero.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just amazing to me that they want to sit here and go, let's wait on the presidential election till all the votes are counted. But when it comes to their own senatorial races, they're good with what we've got counted so far.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and you notice there in states that Trump won, even narrowly, he's not asking for a recount of those states.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's to me, it's just more embarrassment from the most embarrassing president that we've ever had in the history of our country.
right.
And he'll go down in history as the worst president we've ever had. Worse than
Yeah.
worse than Franklin Pierce, worse than James Buchanan, worse than
Grant, U.S. Grant.
Yeah, Grant's corruption or
Yep.
Nixon's corruption, worse than any of those things. This guy will be known as the worst president.
Yep. I think you're right. And that's a tough pill for his supporters to follow. But I think when it's all said and done, when you really think about his accomplishments, he doesn't have a whole lot. I mean, he did get three kind of, as I call them, down ballot Middle Eastern countries to reach agreements with Israel. But, those countries never had any problems with Israel to begin with. So, I mean, if he really wanted to have a long lasting legacy, he needs to get, Syria and Saudi and, Jordan and a couple others to agree that Israel has a right to exist. Other than that, he supposedly rebuilt the military. Well, what did he do? I haven't seen anything that he rebuilt the military. He rushed through that F-35 plane debacle that cost $2 billion to build per plane. And the military said they didn't want it. And yet he rushed it through because, that's jobs for people. And even though we didn't need it, and there's better weaponry systems out there. So, yeah, I don't think he's got a lot to stand on. I think when history looks back on his administration, it definitely is going to be one of the worst, if not the worst.
Agreed. Well, hey, that takes us almost to the end today. So just want to say to everybody, be safe, wear a mask. I'll probably get some flack for that, but when you're going to be out in public and going to be around people, even if you're outdoors, take precautions because we got to stop this spread before we get the virus. Hopefully, with the good news that we've had on the virus front from Pfizer and then the other company, I'm drawing a blank on that company, but they hopefully will be able to get the virus out quickly, or the vaccine out to everyone.
Right.
Not get the virus out to everyone. Get the vaccine out to everyone quickly and safely. But everybody be safe in the meantime.
Yep. And remember to subscribe. You can hit that subscribe button, and you'll get notified whenever a new podcast comes up. And if you don't want to watch us on YouTube, you can just ask your smart speaker to play the GD report, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Yeah, and one last thing, if you're in Georgia, get registered to vote. If you registered for a mail-in ballot last time, you got to re-register again for the January 5th runoffs. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you real soon. Take care.
Good night, everybody.